Close your eyes. Imagine standing in the doorway of a farmhouse on a December evening in 1885. The world outside is silent, no cars, no streetlights, no hum of electricity. Just snow falling in the darkness, covering everything in white. And inside, through the frosted window, you see it. A Christmas tree lit entirely by candles. Real flames, dozens of them, flickering on wax-dipped holders clipped to pine branches. The light is golden, warm, alive, nothing like the cold glow of LED bulbs. It dances, it breathes, and if you stand very still, you can smell it. Melting beeswax mixed with pine sap, wood smoke from the fireplace, and something sweet baking in the Castilian stove. This is Christmas before electricity, before plastic ornaments ordered online, before trees mass-produced on farms and sold in parking lots. This is Christmas when everything, every decoration, every gift, every moment of light was made by hand, earned through labor, and celebrated with a reverence we've almost forgotten. If you've ever felt that modern Christmas has lost something, some magic, some meaning, some connection to what matters, stay with me. Because this story isn't just about nostalgia, it's about remembering what Christmas was when it wasn't a season of consumption, but a season of creation, when light was precious, when family gathered, not out of obligation, but out of necessity, when the simplest things, a candle, an orange, a song, held more weight than anything money could buy. In the 1880s, in rural America, Christmas looked nothing like it does today. There were no department stores blaring carols in October, no Black Friday sales, no credit card debt in January. For most families, especially farm families, immigrant families, families still rebuilding after the Civil War, Christmas was quiet, modest, deeply spiritual. It wasn't about what you could afford. It was about what you could make, what you could share, what you could endure together in the coldest, darkest time of year. The centerpiece of it all was the tree. And not just any tree, a tree you cut yourself. Families would bundle up in wool coats and scarves, trudge through snow into the woods, and search for the perfect evergreen. Not too tall, most farmhouse ceilings were low. Not too sparse, every branch had to hold a candle. And it had to smell right. Pine was preferred. Fir was acceptable. Cedar, in a pinch. But it had to smell like Christmas. Because that smell's sharp, resinous, alive, was part of the magic. Cutting the tree was an event. Fathers and sons would saw through the trunk, while mothers and daughters held the branches steady. Then came the long, cold walk home, dragging the tree through snow, its needles leaving a green trail behind. And when you finally got it inside, set it up in the corner of the parlor or the main room, that's when the real work began. Because a Christmas tree in 1885 wasn't decorated in an afternoon. It took days, weeks even. Every ornament had to be made. Strings of popcorn, threaded one kernel at a time on needles and thread. Cranberries, strung into garlands. Paper chains, cut and glued from old newspapers or catalog pages. Gingerbread cookies, baked and hung with ribbon. Tin stars, cut from old cans and polished until they shone. Apples, when you could afford them, tied to branches with twine. And if you were lucky, if you had a little extra money that year, maybe a store-bought glass ornament from Germany, precious and fragile, wrapped in newspaper and saved year after year. But the most important part, the candles. Small wax candles, clipped to the branches with metal holders designed to catch the dripping wax. Beeswax if you kept bees, tallow if you didn't. Each one had to be placed carefully away from other branches, balanced so it wouldn't tip, positioned where the heat wouldn't melt the pine sap too fast. Because a Christmas tree with candles wasn't just beautiful, it was dangerous. Every family knew someone who had lost a house to fire. Every mother stood nearby with a bucket of water, just in case. Every father checked the candles twice before lighting them, and again before going to bed. The tree was only lit for special moments, Christmas Eve, Christmas morning, maybe once or twice in between if company came. You didn't leave it burning. You couldn't. The risk was too great. But when those candles were lit, when the room went dark, except for that tree glowing in the corner, flames reflected in handmade ornaments, shadows dancing on the walls. It was magic, real, fragile, fleeting magic, the kind you can't replicate with a switch or a timer, the kind that required presence, attention, reverence. Children weren't allowed to run near it. They sat on the floor, cross-legged, silent, staring. Adults stood back, arms folded, watching, and for those few minutes, maybe 10, maybe 20. The whole family existed in a pocket of light in the middle of winter darkness, together, still held by something bigger than themselves. In Block 2, we'll walk through what those Christmas celebrations actually looked like, the rituals, the foods, the gifts, the songs. We'll step into that farmhouse parlor and see what it felt like to celebrate Christmas when every tradition mattered because survival itself required meaning, when light was a gift, not a given, when Christmas wasn't about having more, it was about making more of what you had. If this resonates with you, if you've ever wished Christmas felt more real, leave a comment. Tell us what Christmas meant in your family before it got complicated, because every memory shared keeps the flame of the past alive. This is the way we lived. This is Christmas by candlelight. Preparing for Christmas in the 1880s didn't start in December. It started in November, sometimes October. Because when you make everything by hand, when every decoration, every gift, every dish requires hours of labor, you can't wait until the last minute. The first task was the simplest, but most essential: gathering greenery. Families would take baskets and scissors into the woods and fields, cutting boughs of pine, spruce, holly, and ivy. They'd bring armfuls back to the house and hang them everywhere, over doorways, along mantels, wound around stair railings. The smell filled the house, sharp and clean, a living smell that reminded you, even in the dead of winter, that life was still possible, that spring would come again. Holly berries, red and bright, were especially prized. They represented hope, blood, and life in the colder season. Ivy symbolized fidelity, endurance. Pine and fir were eternal, evergreen. These weren't just decorations, they were symbols, reminders that even when the world was frozen, even when the ground was hard and the nights were long, something in you, something in your family stayed alive. While mothers and daughters decorated the house, fathers and sons worked outside. There was wood to chop extra, because Christmas meant keeping the fire going all day and night. There were animals to tend, fences to mend before the deep cold set in, preserves to check in the root cellar. A farm didn't stop for Christmas, it just paused, and that pause had to be earned. Inside, the kitchen became the heart of preparation. Christmas baking started weeks in advance. Fruitcakes soaked in brandy, wrapped in cloth, stored in tins to age. Mincemeat, made with suet, dried fruits, spices, and sometimes a bit of actual meat, left to cure in crocks. Gingerbread cookies, cut into stars and trees and angels, baked and stored in jars. Every recipe was precious, passed down, adjusted based on what you had that year. If sugar was expensive, you used molasses. If butter was scarce, you used lard. You made it work. And the smells, God, the smells. Cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, ginger spices that cost money but were worth it because they made the house smell like something more than work and survival. They made it smell like celebration, like abundance, even when there wasn't much. A house that smelled like Christmas baking was a house that still had hope. Children helped, of course, even the youngest ones. They stirred batter, they rolled dough, they strung popcorn until their fingers were sore and they'd eaten half the bowl. This wasn't cute family bonding. To me it was labor, necessary labor, but it was also togetherness. Hours spent side by side, working towards something shared, talking, singing, telling stories. That's where the stories my grandma told come from. Those long hours in the kitchen, hands busy, voices filling the silence. Grandmothers would tell about Christmases when they were young, about the year there was no money for gifts, so they made corn-husk dolls. About the year the blizzard came and they couldn't get to church, so they sang carols by the fire instead. About the year PA came home from the war just in time for Christmas Eve, and they cried so hard they couldn't eat. These stories weren't entertainment. They were inheritance. They taught children what mattered, what endured, what it meant to be part of a family, part of a line of people who survived hard things and still found reasons to celebrate. Gift-making started early too. Because gifts weren't bought, they were made. Fathers carved wooden toys in the barn by lamplight after the day's work was done. Mothers sewed dresses from fabric scraps, knitted scarves and mittens, embroidered handkerchiefs. Older siblings made gifts for younger ones: a slingshot, a doll, a wooden horse. Practical things, mostly. Things you needed, but made with care, with thought, with love visible in every stitch, every cut, every sanded edge. No one expected much. A child might get one gift, maybe two if it was a good year, but that gift was opened slowly. examined, treasured. A hand-carved horse wasn't just a toy, it was proof that your father thought about you, that he spent hours after exhausting days making something just for you. A knitted scarf wasn't just warmth, it was your mother's hands, her time, her care made tangible. And then there was the food. Christmas dinner wasn't just a meal, was the meal. The one day of the year when you ate things you couldn't afford the rest of the time. A roast chicken if you were lucky, a goose if you were very lucky, ham if you'd butchered a pig that fall. For poor families, it might just be salt, pork and potatoes but cooked with butter, seasoned with herbs saved from summer, served on the good plates if you had them. Dessert was sacred, a pie made with preserved fruit, a pudding boiled for hours in a cloth bag, sweetened with molasses or honey, studded with raisins if there were any. Sometimes there was a tradition of hiding a coin in the pudding. Whoever found it would have good luck in the new year. Children ate slowly, cautiously, hoping for that glint of silver. Adults pretended not to care, but watched just as closely. Everything was saved, every scrap. Leftover meat became soup, stale bread became stuffing or pudding. Bones went into broth, nothing wasted. Not because of some moral principle, but because there wasn't enough to waste. You used everything. You honored the sacrifice, whether it was the chicken, the butter, or the hours of labor, by using it fully. And through it all, there was church. Christmas Eve service was the center of the celebration. Families walked through snow, sometimes miles, to the small wooden church where everyone gathered. The building was unheated except for a single wood stove. Your breath fogged the air, but the church was full, packed with families in their best clothes, which meant their only good clothes, mended and clean. The church itself was decorated simply. Pine boughs, candles, dozens of them casting golden light on whitewashed walls, maybe a nativity scene carved by someone in the congregation, and the singing, the hymns, voices rising together in the cold, silent night. O come all ye faithful, hark the herald angels sing. Not perfect voices, working voices, tired voices, but unified, powerful, filled with something that didn't need perfection, only presence. The pastor's sermon was short. Everyone was cold. Everyone was tired, but the message was always the same. Light came into darkness. Hope was born in impossible circumstances. God showed up not in palaces, but in stables. Not in wealth, but in poverty. Not in power, but in vulnerability. And for families who knew poverty, who knew vulnerability, who lived every day with the fragility of life on a farm in winter, that message wasn't abstract theology. It was survival. It was proof that their lives mattered, that their struggles had meaning, that they weren't forgotten. After church, families walked home through the snow, carrying lanterns, singing softly. Children were bundled and drowsy. Adults were quiet, reflective. And when they got home, they lit the candles on the tree one last time before bed. Just for a few minutes, just to mark the night, just to say, we made it. We're here. We're together. Next, we'll talk about Christmas morning, the presents, the stockings, the breakfast, the rituals that transformed an ordinary day into something sacred. Stay with me, because this is where memory becomes magic. Christmas morning in 1885 didn't start with alarm clocks or smartphones lighting up with notifications. It started in darkness, in silence, with children waking before dawn, too excited to sleep, whispering to each other across shared beds. Is it morning yet? Almost. Can we go downstairs? Not yet. Wait for Ma and Pa. The rule was universal, even if never spoken aloud. You didn't go downstairs until your parents said so. Partly because of respect, partly because Christmas morning was choreographed. Parents needed time to light the fire, to light the candles on the tree one last time, to make sure everything was ready, to create the moment. So children waited, shivering under quilts, watching the window for the first hint of grey light, listening for footsteps on the stairs. And when they finally heard it, Merry Christmas, you can come down now, they exploded out of bed, bare feet hitting cold wooden floors, racing down the narrow staircase in their nightclothes. And there it was, the tree, lit, candles glowing, the room still dark except for that golden, flickering light, the smell of pine and wax, and the lingering scent of last night's fire being stoked back to life. And there, beneath the tree or hanging from the mantel, gifts, not mountains of them, not piles, maybe 3 things total for the whole family, but they were there, waiting. Stockings came first. These weren't bought, they were actual stockings, long wool socks, sometimes darned at the heel or toe, hung by the fireplace the night before. And inside, if you were lucky, you'd find an orange, maybe an apple, a handful of nuts, walnuts, pecans, hazelnuts, still in their shells, a piece of peppermint candy or horehound, sticky and precious, sometimes a small toy, a wooden top, a cloth doll, a tin whistle. That's it. That was a full stocking, and children treasured every single item, the orange especially. In winter, in rural America, citrus was rare, expensive, exotic. A single orange traveled hundreds of miles by train to reach a small-town general store, where it cost more than most families could justify spending. But at Christmas, you bought one orange per child. And that orange wasn't just fruit, it was sunshine. It was a miracle from far away. It was proof that the world was bigger than your farm, your county, your hard life. Children would hold that orange and smell it first. The peel released oils that filled your hands with fragrance, bright and sharp, and completely unlike anything else in the winter house. Then, slowly, so slowly, they'd peel it, saving the peel because it could be dried and used to flavor cakes or steeped in tea. And then they'd eat it, section by section, savoring every bite, making it last as long as possible. Because once it was gone, it was gone. There wouldn't be another until next Christmas. After stockings came the gifts. These were opened slowly, one at a time, not in a frenzy of ripping paper, because paper was expensive and often reused, but carefully. Unwrapping cloth bundles tied with string, lifting lids off small wooden boxes, and inside, something made, something chosen, something that said, "I thought about you." A girl might receive a rag doll, sewn by her mother from fabric scraps, with button eyes and yarn hair. The doll had a name before it was even opened. It would be loved until it fell apart. It would be mended. It would be passed down to a younger sister someday, carrying with it the memory of the Christmas it was given. A boy might receive a carved wooden horse, sanded smooth, with a string bridle, or a slingshot, perfectly weighted, or a pocket knifer, significant gift, a rite of passage, a statement of trust. He would use that knife every day. He would lose it once, find it again, sharpen it on a whetstone, carry it until he was grown. Practical gifts were common. A new pair of mittens, a muffler, a book, maybe the only book the child would own besides the family Bible. These gifts weren't disappointing. They were necessary. They were care made visible. A mother knitting mittens for her son wasn't just keeping his hands warm. She was saying, "I see you. I know you're cold when you do chores. I want you to be okay." And sometimes there were gifts for the whole family. A new coffee grinder, a cast iron skillet, a bolt of fabric that would become clothes for everyone, a sack of flour or sugar, expensive but necessary, bought as a Christmas investment in the months ahead. These weren't romantic gifts, but they were real. They were survival wrapped in celebration. While gifts were opened, the kitchen came alive. Mothers and oldest daughters cooked Christmas breakfast, usually something special. Pancakes made with real eggs and milk, not just water and flour. Bacon or sausage, if there was any. Fried potatoes, biscuits with butter and jam. Coffee for the adults, milk for the children. The house filled with the smell of fat sizzling, bread baking, coffee brewing. Everyone ate together, around the table if there was room, on the floor near the fire if there wasn't, plates on laps, talking, laughing, singing snatches of carols between bites. This was abundance. Not because there was a lot, but because there was enough. And because everyone was there, together, warm, fed, safe. That was the abundance that mattered. After breakfast came chores, because even on Christmas, animals needed feeding, cows needed milking, fires needed tending. Life didn't stop. But the chores were done quickly, with a lightness that wasn't there on ordinary days. And then, if the weather allowed, children went outside to play with their new toys, to build snowmen, to sled down hills on wooden planks, to exist in that rare pocket of time where work paused and joy was allowed. Adults stayed inside, close to the fire, talking quietly, reflecting, sometimes reading aloud from the Bible, the Christmas story in Luke, familiar and comforting. Sometimes just sitting in silence, hands wrapped around cups of coffee, watching the fire, feeling the warmth, grateful for small things. And the tree stayed lit as long as it was safe, as long as someone was watching. Because that light, that fragile, golden, living light, was the center of everything. It wasn't just decoration. It was symbol. It was reminder. It was hope made visible. Afternoon brought visiting, if neighbors lived close enough, families walking through snow to each other's homes, bringing small gifts, a jar of preserves, a loaf of bread, a basket of nuts. Not obligation, connection, checking on each other, making sure everyone made it through, sharing what little there was to share. Dinner time was quieter than breakfast. Leftovers, mostly, cold chicken, reheated potatoes, a slice of pie. Everyone tired, everyone full not just of food, but of the day itself. And as the sun set early, as darkness came back, the candles on the tree were lit one final time. Children sat close, staring. Adults stood back, arms folded, watching. And for those last few minutes of Christmas, the room glowed, the tree breathed light, and everyone felt it. That strange, holy sense that something bigger than yourselves had visited, that you'd been seen, that your life, small as it was, mattered. Then the candles were blown out, the room went dark, and Christmas was over. Now, we will explore the deeper meanings, the spiritual weight, the symbols, the ways in which Christmas connected families, not only to each other, but to something eternal. Follow me, because this is where nostalgia becomes reality. Christmas in the 1880s wasn't secular, it wasn't neutral, it wasn't a winter holiday, it was Christmas, the birth of Christ. And for families living on the edge of survival, for families who knew hunger, loss, cold, and fear, that story wasn't abstract theology, it was lifeline. Think about it. The Christmas story is about a poor family, far from home, with nowhere to stay. A woman giving birth in a barn because there was no room anywhere else. A baby wrapped in strips of cloth because that's all they had. Shepherds, working men, dirty and disrespected, being the first to witness the miracle. Not kings, not priests, shepherds. For farm families, immigrant families, families still recovering from war, or illness, or crop failure. This story was them. They were Mary and Joseph. They were the shepherds. They understood what it meant to have nothing and still be chosen. To be overlooked by the world and still be seen by God. To survive in impossible circumstances because something bigger than yourself held you together. That's why the nativity scene, however simple, was sacred. Carved wooden figures, Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus, a shepherd or two. Maybe an ox and a donkey set up on the mantle or under the tree. Children weren't allowed to touch them except on Christmas. These weren't toys, they were reminders. Visual theology for people who might not read well, but who understood story, symbol, image. The baby in the manger was hope. Not hope as a vague feeling, hope as a fact, as proof that God showed up in the least likely places, that holiness didn't require wealth or education or power, that the divine could be born in a barn, wrapped in rags, and still change the world. And the candles on the tree, they weren't just pretty, they were symbol too. Christ as the light of the world, light coming into darkness. Every lit candle was a small prayer, a small defiance against the long winter nights. It said, "We are still here, we still have light, we will survive this." The evergreen tree itself was symbol. In the dead of winter, when everything else was brown and frozen and lifeless, the evergreen stayed green. It endured, it survived. It was proof that life continued even when it looked like death had won. Bringing that tree into your house wasn't just decoration, it was an act of faith. A declaration that no matter how hard the winter, spring would come, life would return. The rituals mattered because they connected families to something bigger than themselves. Singing carols wasn't just entertainment, it was joining your voice to centuries of voices. Silent Night was first sung in Austria in 1818. By the 1880s, it had traveled across oceans, across languages, into farmhouses and tenements and churches all over America. When you sang it, you were part of that continuity, part of a story that stretched backward and forward, beyond your small life, beyond your hard year. Reading the Christmas story aloud from the family Bible, usually on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning, was the same. The words were familiar. You'd heard them every year since you were born. But that was the point. Familiarity wasn't boring. It was grounding. It was tradition. It said, "This is who we are. This is what we believe. This is what holds us together when everything else is uncertain." And prayer was woven through everything. Grace before every meal. Thanking God for the food, even when there wasn't much. Prayers before bed. Children kneeling beside beds in the cold, asking God to bless Mama and Papa and the animals, and please let spring come soon. Prayers in church, spoken in unison, voices rising and falling together like breath. For these families, faith wasn't optional. It wasn't something you did on Sundays and forgot the rest of the week. It was survival. It was what got you through the times when the crop failed, when the baby died, when the barn burned down, when winter lasted too long. You held on to God because there was nothing else to hold. And Christmas was the annual reminder that holding on mattered, that you were held, even when you couldn't feel it. But here's the part we forget now. Christmas, for all its spiritual weight, was also joyful. Not the manic, desperate joy of modern holidays, the joy that requires consumption, distraction, excess. This was a quieter joy, deeper, the joy of enough, the joy of together, the joy of having survived another year, and marking that survival with light, with food, with gifts, with song. There was laughter, children playing, adults telling stories that made everyone laugh so hard they cried, silly songs, games played by the fire, charades, riddles, storytelling contests, moments of levity that balanced the weight of the season. Because joy and reverence weren't opposites, they were partners. You could hold both at once. You could be deeply grateful and also silly. You could worship and also play. And the gifts, those simple, handmade gifts, they were incarnation too. Love made tangible, care made visible. Every carved toy, every knitted scarf, every preserved jar of jam was proof that someone thought about you. Someone spent time on you. Someone loved you enough to create something just for you. That's theology. That's the gospel made real in small, everyday ways. The Christmas tree, lit by candles, was the same. It was beautiful, yes, but it was also risky, dangerous, fragile. You couldn't leave it alone. You had to tend it, watch it, be present with it. And in that presence, that attention, there was love. There was care. There was the understanding that some things are precious precisely because they don't last forever. Modern Christmas tries to eliminate risk. We want lights that don't burn out, ornaments that don't break, trees that don't die. We want Christmas to be convenient, controlled, safe. But in doing that, we've lost something essential. We've lost the fragility that made Christmas sacred. The sense that this moment, this light, this warmth, this togetherness is temporary, fleeting, and therefore infinitely precious. Families in the 1880s knew that. They lived with fragility every day. They knew that the baby born healthy in spring might not survive the winter, that the harvest that saved you this year might fail next year, that the house warmed by fire could burn to the ground, that the people you loved could be taken from you without warning. So when they gathered round that candlelit tree on Christmas, they weren't just celebrating a holiday, they were celebrating survival, presence, the fact that they were all still there, still breathing, still together, and that gratitude for simply being alive made Christmas holy. Next, we'll talk about what happened to this kind of Christmas, how it changed, what we lost, and what we can still recover. Stay tuned, because the past is not just memory, it's a lesson. Something changed, not all at once, not overnight, but slowly. Over decades, Christmas transformed from what it was in the 1880s, modest, handmade, sacred, into what it is now, commercial, excessive, exhausting. The shift began with electricity. In 1882, Edward Johnson, an associate of Thomas Edison, created the first electrically lit Christmas tree in New York City. It was a novelty, a curiosity. Most of America still lived by oil lamp and candle, but by the 1920s and 30s, electric Christmas lights were becoming common in cities. By the 1950s, they were everywhere, and they were wonderful, in their way. Safer than candles. Easier, you could leave them on for hours without fear of fire. You could string hundreds of bulbs on a single tree. They were bright, reliable, convenient, but something was lost. The ritual of lighting candles carefully, reverently, one by one was gone. The need to watch, to tend, to be present with the tree disappeared. You flipped a switch, you walked away. The tree stayed lit whether you were in the room or not, and in that convenience, the sense of occasion faded. The tree became background, decoration, not the center of focus, but ambient glow. The shift continued with mass production. Before the early 1900s, most Christmas decorations and gifts were homemade. But as factories grew, as manufacturing expanded, as the consumer economy exploded, you could buy what you used to make. Glass ornaments from Germany, tin toys from factories, store-bought dolls with porcelain faces and real hair. At first, these were luxuries, special purchases for families who could afford them. But by the mid-20th century, they were everywhere. And then came plastic, cheap, colorful, disposable, ornaments that didn't break, decorations that lasted forever, or at least until you got tired of them and threw them away. And again, there was a loss. The hours spent stringing popcorn and cranberries disappeared. The care required to preserve a glass ornament year after year became unnecessary. The stories attached to each handmade decoration. This one grandma made the year Papa came home from the war. This one we made the winter the well-frozo stories faded. Because when you buy everything new, nothing carries memory. Then came advertising. In the late 1800s, Christmas advertising was minimal. A few newspaper ads, catalog pages showing toys and fabrics. But by the 1920s, and especially after World War II, Christmas became an economic event. Retailers realized they could sell not just products, but the idea of Christmas itself. They could create desire, expectation, the sense that Christmas required spending. Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, started in 1924, wasn't just a parade, was a sales event. It signaled the start of the Christmas shopping season. Department stores hired sadness. They created elaborate window displays. They trained children and parents alike to associate Christmas with acquisition. By the 1950s, the transformation was complete. Christmas was no longer primarily a religious or family celebration. It was a retail season. The economy depended on it, and families, swept up in post-war prosperity and the rise of suburban consumer culture, participated eagerly. More was better. Bigger trees, more lights, more gifts, more food, more everything. Credit cards, introduced widely in the 1960s, accelerated the trend. You didn't need to save up for Christmas anymore. You could buy now, pay later. Debt became normal, expected, and the pressure to perform Christmas to create the perfect holiday, the perfect decorations, the perfect gifts became immense. Social media made it worse. Now you didn't just have to create the perfect Christmas, you had to document it, photograph it, post it, prove to everyone that your Christmas was magical, memorable, Instagram-worthy. The pressure shifted from being present to performing presence, from experiencing joy to curating joy for an audience. And here's what happened. Christmas, for many people, stopped being joyful. It became stressful, exhausting, a season of obligation, comparison, and debt. The magic disappeared under the weight of expectation. The simplicity that made Christmas meaningful, light in darkness, togetherness in isolation, gratitude for enough God buried under excess. But here's the harder truth. We can't go back. We can't recreate 1885. We live in a world with electricity, with mass production, with Amazon Prime and same-day delivery. The material conditions that created that older, simpler Christmas are gone. Trying to replicate it exactly would be cosplay, nostalgia without substance. But we can remember, we can reclaim, we can choose, deliberately, to bring back elements of that earlier Christmas, not the specifics, but the spirit, the presence, the intentionality, the reverence for light, for making, for connection. We can simplify, not because we have to, but because we want to. We can choose to make some decorations instead of buying them all. Not because it's cheaper, as often not, but because making something with your hands connects you to the people who came before you, to the generations who had no choice but to make, to the understanding that care takes time, and time is the most valuable thing you can give. We can choose to light candles, not instead of electric lights, fire codes and safety matter, but alongside them, to create moments where the only light is candlelight, where you sit together, watch the flames, and remember that light is still a miracle, that it still matters, that it's still worth tending. We can choose fewer gifts, but more meaningful ones, not because expensive gifts are bad, but because the meaning of a gift isn't in its price, it's in the thought behind it. The time, the knowledge of who someone is and what they need. A handwritten letter can mean more than anything wrapped in expensive paper. A photo album of shared memories. A recipe book with your grandmother's handwriting. A day spent together doing something simple. These are gifts that carry weight. We can choose to protect Christmas morning, to turn off phones, to resist the urge to photograph every moment and just live it instead. To let children open gifts slowly, one at a time, so they actually see what they've received. So they learn gratitude instead of expectation. So they understand that abundance isn't measured in quantity, but in presence. We can choose to cook together instead of ordering out, not because homemade is morally superior, but because cooking together is connection, it's teaching, it's storytelling. It's the same reason families in the 1880s spent hours in the kitchen, not because they loved labor, but because shared work creates bonds that leisure doesn't. We can choose to sing, even if we sing badly, even if it feels awkward at first, because singing together, voices blending, harmonizing, sometimes clashing but always unified, is one of the oldest forms of human connection. It's what our ancestors did. It's what held communities together, and it still works. We can choose church if that's part of our tradition, not out of obligation, but out of desire for something bigger than ourselves, for ritual, for continuity, for the reminder that our lives are part of a larger story. And if church isn't your tradition, we can still choose ritual, lighting candles, reading poetry, sharing what we're grateful for, creating space for the sacred, however we define it. Most importantly, we can choose presence, real presence, the kind that requires turning off distractions and sitting with discomfort and being fully there with the people we love, the kind that notices when someone is quiet, the kind that asks real questions and listens to real answers, the kind that doesn't need entertainment because connection itself is enough. This isn't about rejecting modernity. It's about choosing intentionally what we keep and what we release. It's about remembering that Christmas, at its best, was never about having more. It was about being more present, more grateful, more connected, more alive to the miracle of light in darkness, of love in scarcity, of hope in hardship. The families who celebrated Christmas by candlelight in the 1880s weren't more virtuous than we are. They weren't more faithful or more grateful or more good. They were just people, tired people, struggling people, people trying to survive and find meaning in survival. But they had something we've lost. They had necessity. They had to be present because there was no alternative. They had to make because there was nothing to buy. They had to gather because isolation meant death. They had to find meaning in small things because small things were all they had. We don't have that necessity anymore, but we can choose it anyway, not as burden, as gift, as liberation from the tyranny of excess, as return to what actually matters. Let's wrap things up by returning once more to that farmhouse, feeling what it was like when the candles were lit, the family was gathered, and Christmas was still real. And let's ask, what would it take to feel that again? Stay with me, because the answer might be simpler than you think. Close your eyes one more time. Come back with me to that farmhouse. It's Christmas evening, 1885. The sun has set. The world outside is dark and cold and silent. Inside, the fire has burned down to coals, glowing red in the hearth. The family gathers one last time. Father carries a candle from the kitchen. Mother lifts the youngest child onto her hip. The older children stand close, pressed together for warmth, and slowly, carefully, Father begins lighting the candles on the tree. 2, 3. Each flame catches, flickers, holds. 4, 5, 6. The room begins to glow. 7, 8, 9. The children's faces shine in the golden light. 10, 11, 12. The shadows dance on the walls. 13, 14, 15. And when the last candle is lit, Father steps back. Mother shifts the baby. The children lean forward. And for a moment, just a moment, everything is still. The tree glows. The flames breathe. The house smells of pine and wax and wood smoke and the lingering sweetness of Christmas baking. And the family stands there, together, held in a pocket of light in the middle of winter darkness. This is it. This is Christmas. Not the gifts, though they matter. Not the food, though it's shared with gratitude. Not the decorations, though they're beautiful. This moment, this presence, this light. Can you feel it? Can you feel what they felt? Not nostalgia, not sentimentality, but the real, raw, sacred sense that you are alive, that you are together, that despite everything, despite the cold and the dark and the hardship you have survived, you have made it to this moment, and this moment is enough. That's what Christmas by candlelight gave them. Not perfection, not ease, but meaning. The understanding that life, however hard, however small, however ordinary, was still worth celebrating, was still worth marking, was still worth light. And here's the truth we need to hear. That Christmas, that sense of enough, of presence, of light mattering is still possible. Not because we go back in time, not because we reject modernity, but because we choose, deliberately and courageously, to create space for what matters. We live in a world of abundance, of electric lights and same-day delivery and infinite entertainment, and that abundance is a gift. It's made life easier, safer, longer. We don't want to go back to oil lamps and dangerous candles and winters that killed children. We don't. But abundance has a cost, and the cost is this. We've lost the ability to see the miracle in small things. We've lost the reverence for light, because light is everywhere, always, at the flip of a switch. We've lost the gratitude for enough, because we're constantly told we need more. We've lost presence because distraction is infinite and always available. And so Christmas has become one more thing to consume, one more season to perform, one more expectation to meet. And in the process, we've lost the very thing Christmas was supposed to give us: rest, peace, light in darkness, hope in hardship, the reminder that we are seen, we are loved, we are held, but we can reclaim it. Not by recreating 1885, not by pretending we live in a world we don't, but by choosing, in small and deliberate ways, to bring back what mattered. Light a candle, just one, on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning. Turn off the electric lights, gather your family, sit in the glow, watch the flame, let it be enough. Don't photograph it, don't post it, just be there, present, alive, together. Make something, anything, a batch of cookies, a string of paper chains, a card written by hand, not because it's better than but because making something with your hands connects you to every person who ever made something because they had to your grandmother, to her grandmother, to the long line of people who survived by creating. Give fewer gifts, but know who you're giving to. Think about what they need, what they'd love, what would make them feel seen, and wrap it with care. Not expensive paper care, attention, the understanding that this gift says, I thought about you, I know you, I love you. Protect your time. Say no to obligations that drain you. Choose gatherings that nourish. Let go of the pressure to make Christmas perfect for other people. Your children don't need a Pinterest perfect holiday. They need you, present, not stressed, not performing, just there, even if it's awkward, especially if it's awkward. Teach your children the carols you grew up with. Tell them why those songs matter. Let them hear your voice, imperfect, human, real, joining with theirs, creating something together that didn't exist before. And tell stories about Christmases when you were young, about your grandparents, about the year there was no money but there was still joy, about the time the power went out and you lit candles and it was the best Christmas ever. Tell them so they know. We come from people who survived, who found light in darkness, who made beauty out of scarcity, who loved fiercely even when life was hard. Because that's what the families in the 1880s understood, that we've forgotten. Christmas isn't about what you have, it's about who you are when you gather. It's about the light you create, literal and metaphorically, in the darkest time of year. It's about saying, collectively, as a family, as a community, we are still here. We still have hope. We still choose love. The candles on that tree in 1885 were dangerous. They were fragile. They required attention. They didn't last long. But while they burned, they were beautiful. They were magic. They were enough. And maybe that's the lesson. That beauty doesn't have to be permanent to matter. That magic doesn't have to be convenient to be real. That enough is still enough, even in a world that tells you it's not. Sarah, sitting by that candlelit tree with her children sleeping nearby, understood something we need to remember. She had survived the unthinkable. She had rebuilt from nothing. She had walked miles through cold and danger to find her babies and bring them home. And now, on Christmas night, in a small rented room with a simple tree and one candle burning, she had everything that mattered. She was together, she was warm, she had light, she had hope, and she wrote in her diary, "This is what rebuilding looks like. Not perfection, not ease, but choosing every day to light a candle against the dark. Sing, that's Christmas. That's always been Christmas. And it still can be, if we choose it. So this Christmas, wherever you are, whatever your circumstances, light a candle, just one. Watch it burn. Feel its warmth. Remember that light is still a miracle. That presence is still a gift. That you are still here, and that is enough." This was another episode of The Way We Lived, from Ancient Memories of America. Thank you for stepping back in time with me. Thank you for remembering what Christmas was, and what it still can be. If this resonated with you, if you felt something shift as you listened, share it with your family, with someone who needs to remember that simple can be sacred, that less can be more, that the flame of the past still has something to teach us. This is the America we remember. Not perfect, not easy, but real, human, connected, alive. Merry Christmas. May your home be filled with light. May your heart be full of presents. May you find, in the midst of all the noise, a pocket of silence where the sacred still speaks, keeping the flame of the past alive. Until the next episode.